Hello, hello. It's Molly with Bridget's Grove in 30 Days of Goddess, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the how of actually making space for the sacred and for this practice in your own life. So I often say that 30 Days of Goddess, daily practice in general, is about making space for yourself and for the sacred and for in your very own life. But it came to my attention recently that I don't necessarily explicitly talk often about how you make that space. So I find that the space kind of in many ways emerges organically from having the book and making the commitment, making the promise. And then that space comes from there. The space comes from deciding, I'm going to do this. I have the tools and the process that I want to employ in doing it. And then the space comes in doing it, in making the promise and then stepping into it and actually keeping your promise. And then all the practices and processes and prayers and things that I share, all of those are parts and pieces of making space for the sacred and for yourself in your own life. So you can use any of those things: contemplating the prompt word, reading a prayer aloud, engaging one of my small little practices that I share. All of those things can be a way to make a space. But one of the things I realized recently is I don't think I've ever spoken like really explicitly about the how of making the space. So I have a couple of tips and a couple of ideas about how to actually make that space. And I would like to say that, like, for me, the primacy of daily practice and the importance of carving out the container and holding it sacred, that is something that's been a long time unfolding for me. I've had daily practices for a long time, and it really came into great clarity in my woods priestess practice when I decided I was going to go down and sit on the rocks every day in the woods and see what I could learn, and I was going to do that every day for a year. And so that was quite a few years ago. I don't even remember the year that I decided to keep this woods priestess practice up. But one of the things that's taken me longer than that, so that was I want to say, at least 7 to 10 years ago. But one of the things that was really crystallized for me after that experience was the moving daily practice up in my life. So it's all well and good to say, I'm going to do, an interesting bug just went by and landed over my head. It's one thing to say, I'm going to do this every day and keep your promise. It's another thing to say, not only am I going to do this every day, but I'm going to make it a priority. I'm going to move it up in my days. So there was times in my woods priestess year which went on into multiple years, but I would, not make it down into the woods until sunset, sometimes even after sunset. And I would feel the hole in my day all day long. I would feel the craving in my soul all day long, and I would withhold it and withhold it and withhold it and withhold it. And so one of the things I've learned with 30 Days of Goddess is do not withhold it. That's one of my tips about making space for the sacred, is do not withhold it for yourself. Give yourself what you need, and give yourself what you need early and often, and make it a priority. Make it a priority, make it primary, and don't save it. Savor it now. So I had a couple of ideas, though, that are a little bit more practical than that. One is to make it easy, comfortable, and accessible. So something that a space that is already set up that you can easily get to, not something that you have to, walk a long distance to access or unlock a bunch of doors or drive away to access, but something that you can get to easily, that you can get to readily, and that you don't have to unpack or set up too much. For example, I don't do a lot with watercolor paints because I don't have anywhere to set them up, and I don't want to get out stuff. I don't want to get out water. I don't want to get out a bunch of paints. That's why I stick with like collage type activities and colored pencils, because I can carry those in a bag or a tub and have it accessible. So one of the ways to make space is to have it be accessible. Have what you need accessible, readily accessible, in a tub that you can grab, on a at an altar space where you can sit, on a yoga mat that you can easily roll up, outside a door that you can quickly walk out of, like something that's easy, comfortable, and accessible. Another tip is to fold your practices into an existing routine. I've spoken of this often, but I'm saying it again, which is that we all have practices already. We all have daily practices already. We have a teeth brushing practice. Sometimes we have a TV watching practice. Sometimes we have a Facebook checking practice. Sometimes we have reading at night practice. Sometimes we have food related practices. We all have routines already. So one of my best tips is to fold meeting your spiritual hunger into existing routines and processes and practices that you already have. At the same time, looking for pockets of presence, moments of opportunity, transition points. And I have another audio about devotional mudrooms, like basically the mudrooms in your life, these transitional points in your day that you can invite in a practice instead. These are sometimes, what I've found is these are sometimes moments when you need to be tempted to kind of veg out or to reach for your phone, and instead reach for the sacred. And so those moments of pause, those pockets of presence, those times when you think, gee, I wish something more magical was happening right now. I wish I was feeling something. I wish I was doing something. I wish I was connected. I wish I was dancing with divinity in this moment. That pocket of presence, that's your invitation. That's your moment to do something. And my best tip and the most important one is to make it non-negotiable. I'm serious, to make it non-negotiable. And my first experience with non-negotiable practice was with my yoga practice, which I've kept up for more than 20 years. And it is, I roll out that mat and I practice my yoga through rain and shine and ice and snow and migraines and fevers and nursing toddlers and anything. It's non-negotiable. And the best example I can think of of a non-negotiable, non-spiritual daily practice is brushing my teeth. Like brushing my teeth is non-negotiable. Going to bed and getting enough sleep is also non-negotiable to me. You might have different non-negotiables. Maybe your sleep is, a wiggle room area for you. But for me, I get enough sleep, I practice yoga, and I brush my teeth. And these things are, shower, that's a little bit more flexible. But there's certain things that I always, always, always do. My 30 days of goddess practice, my connection with the goddess and tending to the sacred and my soul in every day, it is as non-negotiable as brushing my teeth. And so I encourage you to think about how to make it non-negotiable. And you might say, I'm a caregiver, I have kids, I have a parent that I'm caregiving for, or I have I have a job that's very demanding, and I honor that, and I hear that, and I know that is real. And I also know that it's possible to introduce non-negotiability into certain practices and to put them in a place of priority. And so the key to making something non-negotiable is it starts with keeping a promise to yourself and keeping your own word and being trustworthy to yourself. So thinking about other things in your life that are non-negotiable, like brushing your teeth or eating regularly or going to bed, like those things that are non-negotiable, how is it that you do them? How is it that you fit them in? Like, how do you make time to go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom, or eat dinner when you need to eat dinner? Not when you need to go to the bathroom. What makes those things happen every day for you? And then apply that same kind of logic to your spiritual practices as well. Do you do them for the most part because they are either necessary or a part of survival, or they are an ingrained habit. So they're necessary to your actual physical continuation on this planet, or they're ingrained and habitual. You would never think of not doing them because it's so much of a habit. It never occurs to you to even skip them. They matter and they are important, but here's the point. So is this, and so are you. You matter and you are important, and tending to your soul matters and is important. And so the more we treat daily practice like it's non-negotiable, like this is something that is going to happen. And you might think, oh, that sounds boring, that sounds rote, that sounds routine. No, this is how the space is made. This is how the door opens. This is how we dialogue with divinity and dance with the sacred. This is how awareness dawns, is by making and keeping the promise. And another thing is to have an actual space to go to. I find it really, really helpful to have an actual space, whether that's stepping outside into a specific space, a bench that you sit on, a porch that you sit on, a balcony that you look out from, a window that you look out of, an altar space that you tend. But having a place that you actually go to makes a huge difference in carving out space for the sacred and tending to a regular space in your life. And the other thing to remember is that life will still be here. Stepping out, stepping away for a few minutes, the rest of life will still be here and it will wait for you. And so don't worry about taking a pause, about taking time out or stepping away, because you're not really stepping out. What you are doing is accepting the invitation to step in. And that's what you're making space for, is stepping in. And what I find is when you make the space to step in, you have so much more to give to the rest of your life. You have so much more to draw upon for the rest of your life. So you may feel guilty about taking time away from the partner, the kids, the lover, the cat, the whatever it is. You might feel challenged to step away from that. But what's really happening is you will be resourced and better able to be in relationship with those other things that need your time and attention, those other people that need your time and attention, if you are fed. You really will. And they would rather have you step away for 15 minutes or even an hour than have you be stressed and desperate and snappy and crabby because you're longing for it and you feel like you're not allowed. So the other thing is to have a routine, a basic structure, so you know where to start and what to include. So you're not just sitting there like thinking, what do I do? So that's part of what 30 Days of Goddess really offers and is good at offering, is there's a structure. You know, there's a book, there's cards to draw, there's things to read, there's the little videos to watch, there's things to think about, and you can, but so you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to create something fresh every day. You can step into it and have the basic structure be there. And then likewise, let these practices and resources that I've created and offered for you and that we sell in the Etsy shop and that I make available in printable form, etc. Let these things support you. Let them hold you. Let them make space for you. Part of making space for the sacred in your life is about accepting the tools that are offered and letting them create the space for you that you crave. And then another thing is to be patient and flexible. I think sometimes people get discouraged because it's not everything every day. They can't do everything every day. And so it's important to be patient and flexible, but it's also important to claim your space and to stand up for your right to inhabit your own life. I feel like that's really key in this whole practice. Is like, we have a right to inhabit our own lives, to be present in our own lives, to be here in all the fullness and complexity, and not to be fragmented in a million directions and fractured in a million directions and pulled in a million different places and like bumped off course. We have a right to inhabit our own lives and to be in the center of our own living. And so that's important too. And then the other tip is to choose. Sometimes it really means leaving something else that you care about, or not getting to something else that you do like or do enjoy. It's choose. And so choosing can mean, and that's really important too, choosing for me means leaving my phone inside and stepping out with just my book and my pen and the sunshine and seeing what I can see and hearing what I can hear and feeling what I can feel, and not inviting the quote unquote company of other minds that comes with having a phone with you, or that even comes with having produced something. So having to take a picture or whatever. If the phone is left inside, then you can be where you are. So choose. Sometimes choosing this, choosing yourself, choosing daily practice, choosing the goddess, choosing a goddess-based path, it means leaving something else behind, and that's okay. And sometimes it means leaving something behind that you also care about, and that's okay too. Changing something else to accommodate the space is another tip. for making space. So if there's something else that you regularly do, or that maybe isn't that fulfilling to you, or you have a pocket of presence there, you have a moment, you have a gap, there's a space in which you veg out playing a little game, or when you watch it to turn on the TV or something like that, you can change something else to make this space. Getting up earlier, adjusting what time you go to bed, or whether or not you watch something on Netflix before you go to bed. You can adjust timing. So changing something can create more space and open up a door. And I already touched on it, but I'm going to touch on it again because it's super important. Be untethered. Do not take your phone. One of my best tips for a fulfilling daily practice is to not even turn over your phone until your practice is complete. And for me, I write in the morning, and I offer my prayers in the morning, and I drink my tea in the morning, I do my yoga in the morning, I go for a walk in the morning, and I usually glue stuff down in my book later. I do that when I'm doing school with the kids. Sometimes I do it at night. The gluing things and accumulating little bits of magic and wisdom onto my pages often comes later, but the sitting with myself, listening to my spirit, dialoguing with divinity, communing with the sacred, that happens with no phone. And what I discover is if I turn the phone over in the morning, if I see the slightest thing that has popped up, then I will have, part of my mind will be tethered. Part of my mind will be occupied by somebody else's thought, wish, need, whatever. So it's super important that I not only keep it out of my hand, but I keep it turned over so I can't even see. And that, I mean, there's a lot of things we can talk about there. There's books written on it, etc. But for me, I have all notifications shut off other than Messenger and text messaging, and then a couple auto notifications like shipping things or stuff like that. But I cannot see that something's there, that I have some kind of message. I have to walk away and leave it turned over. And I highly recommend walking away and leaving it turned over. And if you feel like, oh, somebody might want to get in touch with you, think about how things were 20 years ago, and if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, they had to wait till you're available. And basically that's still true now. Just because people can get in touch with you all the time doesn't mean you have to pay attention all the time. And they can get in touch with you when you're available. It doesn't have to be, you do not have to always be available. And every time we touch our phones, we invite in the company of other minds, and it is in our own, wholeness and here-ness that we hear the sacred speak most readily, and that's what we want to make space for. And prioritize, that's what I was saying before, is do this first. Make it primary. Keep your promise. Recenter into your own life every day before you invite other people to come rushing in, including the digital people. And then the other thing is about making space is you just kind of do it. Like, I think back about my own self waiting and longing to go to the woods and feeling it inside me like a hunger. And I'm like, I just started doing it. Nobody really even cares that much. Like, your sensation of being tethered or being pulled, or somebody's waiting for me, or somebody needs me, they can wait. And a lot of times they don't even notice that you've stepped outside, or that you're sitting at your altar space again, or that you've rolled out your yoga mat, or that you've gotten your prayer book and are sitting with it. Like, a lot of times the other people don't even notice, or doesn't really affect them as much as we think it might, or as much as we fear it might, particularly for people socialized as women, particularly for parents, particularly for mothers. That sensation of everybody's waiting for me, everybody needs me, I can't take time for myself. A lot of times that's coming from inside, from an inside expectation, and not from outside. And if it is coming from outside, maybe it's time for a change. So anyway, you just kind of do it. No one else will do it for you. And the other people who you share your life with, adapt to you choosing this space unapologetically. They adapt, because when it's non-negotiable, they come to accept that when they see. So part of how people respect what we've set up for ourselves is that we respect ourselves, and that we can trust our own word and we can keep our own promise. And then when we are devoted to keeping our own promise, other people accept that. When we're wishy-washy about keeping our own promise, other people will bend that for us. Do you see what I mean? So we have to be wholeheartedly and unapologetically promise keepers to ourselves. And then the last thing is believe that you are worth it. And that might be harder said than done, but believe that you are worth it. You deserve space in your own life. And I would say, like, just like you hunger for the sacred hungers for you too. You're reaching out in longing. It's reaching back. It's reaching back. And so we can't deny or withhold this from ourselves, because it is there waiting for us, inviting us in, craving our company, just like we are craving its company, that we are craving this. It craves us back. And the final point is that this will change your life. I promise. Making space for the sacred and for yourself in your own life is worth it. It is a world renewing and life changing